to myself, what a wonderful world.
Hi, Shobana. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited to have you on another episode. Look at you. You're already on 2 episodes.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. So if you guys didn't tune into mine and Shobana's live, I think it was like 1 or 2 weeks ago or something like that. We were talking about periods and pregnancies, and we wanted to kind of further dive into those topics and actually do like a pre-recorded video so anyone could watch it, because I think these are topics that no one really talks about openly, and I feel like women are made to feel ashamed about it. So we wanted to dive into these topics. We already did one on pregnancy, so we're going to dive into periods this time, because this is something that I have a lot of issues with, and I'm sure a lot of women have a lot of issues with. I mean, we deal with it for majority of our lives, or at least a good chunk of our lives. So if you haven't had problems with it, I'm jealous.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, let's trade lives. But yeah, let's get into this. So my first question is, were you ever able to just like openly talk about your period, like around your family? Was your family cool with it?
Yep, they were. So my dad was great in the sense that he would like literally go get pads and like tampons if we needed it. But it's because in our culture, like I'm Telugu and Telugu Hindu. So in my family culture, we have this thing where when the woman gets her period, she has to wash her hair, have a bath, put on new clothes, and then she can't touch anything that's fabric or can't be washed.
Oh.
Not in my home here, because I'm like, hell's no, mom, we're not doing this. But definitely in my home, like my entire family's in India, so I go back every year, so I'm very connected to them. So anytime I go there, and so then the women have to wash their hair, and they don't, and I guess they tell me that the reason this came about was so that when women have their periods, they don't have to do any housework, they can take some rest. But I feel like it's evolved to the point that it made me feel more powerless, and that the period was somehow disempowering, because I'm from a different culture. Right?
So you can't explain what you can't do again. You can't touch
anything that can't necessarily that can be washed. So it's weird, right? So like anything that can so your clothes and stuff, you can't touch any other clothes because you have to rewash them. But if there's something like a book, right, which you can't rewash, then it's okay to touch it.
Interesting. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. But I think within a lot of South Indian cultures, and even like some cultures within the Sri Lankan community, you have to like wash your hair after your period and put everything that you're wearing in the laundry. The no touching thing, I don't know who else does it, but I know it's definitely specific.
Ours is like you have to wash. I don't know why, but on the 3rd day we have to wash our hair.
We do that too.
Why?
My
mom has never given me like a real explanation.
I don't think they know. They don't know.
Things, like they make us do these things, and I'm like, but why? And they're just.
I just feel like it's because that's what they
were taught.
Yeah, and because it's cleaner. I don't know.
But why the 3rd day? The 3rd day is like
because
almost kind of starting to fade away.
That's probably why. I don't know. We have to do the 1st day and then again on the 3rd day.
Oh.
So my mom hasn't upheld much of those traditions, but still the 3rd day thing she does, and it drives me mental because my mom is the most kindest, generous person that like is the backbone of her family. So like I try to just do stuff so that it makes her happy because she doesn't ask for anything other than this. But it kills me inside because I just feel like why do I feel like I'm being punished for having my period? You know what I mean?
That's how I feel too, because I'm like, okay, so you guys don't have you can't touch anything that can be washed. Ours is like you have to do the 3rd, like wash your hair on the 3rd. I've never really followed that rule. I never understood it. Like I straight up told my mom, I'm like, if I don't get why we're doing it, I'm just not really gonna do it because it doesn't make any sense to me, and I don't have time to remember all these rules. Like there's too many of them. You know what I mean? And so I don't really do that. I think I remember my mom saying it's like it helps your period go away faster or something like that. But like my mom says a lot of things, so I'm not.
I feel
really
like people,
sure.
I'm like I haven't heard that one before. I feel like no one knows why.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just traditions that like happen. They probably had a purpose back in the day, but then and they just like it's like broken telephone. Like you just
Yeah.
pass on these traditions
Yeah.
and no one knows why. You're just
Yeah.
doing it because everyone else is doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
That and
And
we're not allowed to like touch anything like religious. Like we can't go to the
oh,
mandir or anything like that.
100% that too on our
Yeah,
end.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you know what? I feel like I hate that because I'm like, how can you
Same.
guys tell me? How can you like control my relationship with God? Like he's the one that gave, or he or she's the one, or God is the one that gave me my period.
That's what I don't get. My mom, okay, so I'll be like, well, why can't I go like to the mandir or whatever? Like, why can't I touch any of this stuff, right? And my mom's like, oh, because you're considered dirty right now. I'm like, first of all, rude.
Yes.
Second of all,
What the heck?
second of all, if God considered me dirty, why the hell did he give me my period then? Like, what was the
And why
purpose
does it
of
help
that?
enable you to have a child? How is that dirty? Like you can be hygienic with your period. And I don't know, maybe back in the day it was harder to be cleaner because there
Hygienic.
wasn't, yeah. But now I'm like,
It doesn't
guys,
make any sense. It's like so
no,
not relevant.
no.
I'm like, I don't get it. I'm like, and I find it so rude that you think I'm dirty around this time because I'm like, without my period, I wouldn't be able to bear children, like you said. And then I'm not considered a woman if I
Yeah.
can't bear children. So
You're like,
like,
what the
there's
heck?
still a-
Yeah, Mike was like, you know what? He's like cool with everything. But with this stuff, he's like, we're not talking about the period like this. And if we don't have to go to your parents' house when Sophia has her period, that's fine. But I don't need her to think that like she's dirty or less powerful or whatever it is when she has her period.
yeah, good
And I'm
on him.
like, cool. I get it.
God.
It's crazy. I grew up with it. So I kind of, you kind of get it
You
because
just like numb to it.
you're
Yeah.
numb to it and you're like, fine, my mom doesn't ask for much other than these weird things. So
Yeah. No, I
all
feel
right.
like the same. Like I wasn't really allowed to talk. Well, your parents were kind of cool with it. Like they knew if you were on your period. Like I wasn't really allowed to talk about it in front of my dad. Like my mom would obviously know. My grandma would know because we shared the same washroom. So
Yeah.
like she would obviously
Yeah.
know. But like we won't like openly say it. I don't think I've openly told my dad I'm on my period ever before.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I think it would be like my mom would tell my dad,
Yeah.
or like I don't know, like I would just be like I'm not really feeling well. And it's like what, like just once a month casually around the same time you're not feeling well every single
Yeah.
time. Like it doesn't really
Yeah. Yeah. You're
like
like,
do they clue it? And like we wouldn't even call it our period. We would be like, oh, I'm on my time. Like it's my
and it's crazy.
time.
You know what? Actually, only until a couple months ago, I'd call it my time of month. And then we had our conversation, and I was like, heck, I'm going to call it my period. Because that's like, why am I like tying a bow around this thing? It's my period. It's just my period, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm,
now
like,
I'm
trying to
like,
make it look all, like, fancy and, like, not so, like,
or not give it a
simple.
name and or not acknowledge it by not giving it a name, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm gonna call it my period. And it's definitely been like a change for me just like in the last few weeks because I'm like, nope, that's just when I talk to people. I'm like, oh, so I had my period. And I find that once you start calling it by its name, other women are willing to share their experience.
Oh, they're just like, yeah, okay. Like,
Let's do this.
I had a lot of I've had period problems ever since I can remember. And I used to be very, like, ashamed about it. Like, I used to be like I felt like something was wrong with me all the time and, like, no one else understood. And I was just like, and it wasn't until probably the last, like, 5 years, like 4 or 5 years of my life when I like really went like downhill with my period that I started just like openly talking about it because at this point I was just like, fuck it, I need an answer. Like I need an answer. Someone give me an answer because like the doctors aren't helping, nothing is helping me, and I need to know if other people have this problem. And I talked about my period to anyone and everyone that I could talk to about it.
Good for you.
Whether it was women, men, like whoever. I was just like, this is what's happening. I'm fucked up. Like, what's your suggestion at this point? Or like at least let me rant about it because it's such a big part of my life that I have no control over. And it sucks. Like it sucks that you can't just like be like, you know what, like I don't want to do this meeting today because I can't function. Like I can't give you my 100.
I'm not
or
my best.
I can't get you this project by today because I'm really just not feeling well and I need like some time for my mental health to like take a step back and chill out and like relax because you can't function at 100% all the time. And some women get it way worse than others, right? And like, so like some women, they can function maybe close to 100% when they are on their period. I don't agree that all women or a lot of women can function at 100% when they're on their period.
We're
I
all
don't think
different,
that's
right?
true.
Like,
I think,
yeah.
yeah, I think we're all different. I'm sure there are some women that can, but I don't think majority of us can for obvious reasons, because like you're bleeding for like 7 days, you're tired and everything hurts. Like, you know?
Yeah, you have back pains, you have stomach pains. You're like, for me, I feel like I get a lot more weak now after having Sophia. I'm a lot more weak in my pelvic area. So
Mhm.
standing for long periods of times starts to hurt sometimes. You're exhausted. My girlfriend used to have such bad periods that she would go through like bags of pads a day, to the point that
Oh my
she's
God.
lost so much blood that she had to get transfusions done, right?
Oh
Um, but
no.
she still like operated at like a 95%
But
level.
that's the thing, right? We're always expected to operate at a 90,
Yes.
like
It took
90,
a toll on her
100%.
health, right?
And, but it does. And it takes such a toll on you mentally and
Yes.
physically that it's
Yes.
like, well, if you had just been given the time to rest during this time, like you could work just as efficiently or if not more when you're off of it, right? And
Yes.
like I think that sucks, like you because you can't even just openly, like, because people don't talk about it so openly, you can't just openly be like, well, I don't feel like it today because I'm on my period. Like, you know?
And it's like, well, that's nice. Everyone goes through their period.
Yeah. Or
So
like you're
suck
just
it
like
up.
yeah, exactly. It's like a suck it up type of thing. And it's like, well, I'm sure if men had their period, like no one would just be sucking it up.
It would
Like,
be a holiday half the year.
exactly. They'd be like, okay, 1 week out of the month, you
Yeah,
don't need to work.
absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
you're good. Like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's yeah, and unfortunately, I think it does come down to that. I think that if the roles were reversed, because the society is, traditionally led by men, and that's changing now. I think their experiences led the way, and because the female experience didn't, I don't think what had shaped society at that point, we don't get the same
Recognition or
opportunity,
privilege or opportunity.
whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, like it's crazy, because if you even if you period map, right, like what your body's going through in that 1 month, there are so many different hormonal changes that takes you along so many different pathways, mentally and physically. And I feel like now, even after having our conversation the other day, I'm like, you know what, you had talked about it and you'll talk about it a little bit more, I guess. I'm like, I think I need to figure out really where I am on my,
Your
monthly
schedule.
cycle, and
Yeah.
optimize my work based upon that.
So that was something that took me a while to understand. After I finally kind of got my period under control by shedding a lot of things in my life, and like releasing a lot of stress, I started suffering from something called PMDD, which is like PMS, but like times like a bajillion. It was like so annoying. So anytime I'm in and around my period, the week to week and a half before I actually get my period, I suffer from like severe like mood swings. I get really, really anxious and depressed for like no reason. I'll have like anxiety attacks, panic attacks, whatever it is. They kind of come out of nowhere. And I get really tired and like slow. And so when I started noticing this, I was like, okay, it happens the week and a half before my period. So I need to know that like around this time, I shouldn't be working, like putting my body through extra stress. Like it needs to rest. And like, I should, work around that. And then the day of like when my period actually starts, like I realized 3 days into my period, after that, it was like a switch flips and like I'm back to normal and I'm feeling good again. And even though I'm still on my period, I can still work fine and whatever, because all that shit is like released out of me. And so I started basing my schedules around that, because
That's amazing.
Yeah, like and I really had to track it at that point, because otherwise like sometimes it feels like, I don't know if this happens to you, like if you get really moody, I assume you do, I think it's a normal thing that happens, is you don't realize sometimes that your period is coming and you're just like, and everyone's just pissing you off and you're just like, why are you so annoying? Like,
but it's not even just like a emotion, it's not even like a mental thing. Like I feel physical reactions, like anger to some of the
like
things.
irritated, like just like your blood is boiling for like no reason, and then like someone can do something so minor and you're just like,
that normally wouldn't bother you. And exactly.
And so I was like, okay, I have to track this because I'm going absolutely crazy at some points. And I don't really like to use the word crazy, but that's kind of how it felt, right?
You feel like that
because like people are just like looking at you like, well, why are you like that? Like, why are
Why
you
are you acting like
yeah,
that?
why
Like,
are you
why are you
acting like that? And I'm
overreacting?
like,
Like,
am I like
yeah,
crazy for like reacting this way? And then you start realizing, okay, it's not really you. It's that your body's going through hormonal
mhm,
changes and that's what's kind of happening. And you need to understand that you're in that cycle of, you know, your period, right?
yeah,
And I was telling you this when we were on live, was that men reset every 24 hours, but women reset every 28 days or so, right? Depending on what your cycle
yeah,
is like. And each week is so different for us. Like
yes,
each week feels like we're different women. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it's crazy. It's crazy. And then people expect us like towards the
To
end
be
of
the
it
same.
just yeah to be the same
Yeah,
throughout each of these phases, and it's like so unfair because it's like my body doesn't work the same way as you, so how do you expect me to function
the
the
same way
same
as
way
you
as
do,
you?
for
Like you
sure.
can't, right?
No,
It's
but
absolutely awful.
it is absolutely awful, and it's just another thing that we don't talk about. So women, like you said, a lot of us probably go through it, but we don't know about it, and our lives are not designed to accommodate it because we don't admit it to ourselves and we don't admit it to each other, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I wish our lives were a little bit more accommodating at least. Like I get like you can't like completely stop. Like
Yep.
that's understandable. Like life goes on, you have to keep going on too. But I wish it was a little bit more acceptable just to be like, look, I'm really not feeling myself right now. And like now I have started saying that to people,
Yeah.
especially to women, like when I'm talking to and I'm lucky I work mostly with women, so it's easier to say something like
Yeah.
that. You
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah.
mean?
For
Like they
sure.
understand it, they can feel your pain. But I wish it was more acceptable. I wish you could go up to a coworker and just be like, look, I'm gonna get my period in like a week. Like
Let's finish this project up now, or let's do it in
yeah,
a week. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. Or like let's like work around this so that I can, actually contribute the way I need to
Yeah.
contribute rather than like being slow or being annoyed with you or yelling at you for, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
and I think that's where we kind of lack because we just don't talk about it openly, and we especially don't talk about it around men. Like we don't want to like bother men with these problems, but like we're the reason all of them exist. So
I love it. Yeah, it's funny. Like Mike's like, wow, he was very surprised that like my family and I we all talk about it very openly, and I talk about it very openly because I guess most people don't,
yeah, they
right?
don't.
And he didn't grow up necessarily in a family where they talk about it, but it's funny because of the weird cultural things that we do. We have to talk about it. Like when someone's on their period because they're sitting on the couch not touching anything, right? Like even back home, like everybody knows when everybody's on their period
That's
because
crazy. Yeah, I've never really experienced that within a culture. Like more so, like I think people would catch on if I wasn't like touching religious stuff, like going
yeah,
to the and
yeah,
like our
yeah.
house had like a mandir in it and stuff like that. So like I wasn't allowed to go into that room and whatever. But I mean, other than that, it's like how do you tell? And is like everyone really paying attention to that? Like how often am I really going to the mandir? But going back to the whole scheduling my life around my period, I think that's made my life so much easier because like the first 2 weeks or so, where I'm not on my period and I've just like finished off, uh, I'll do all my like hard work or like work that requires a lot of energy from me. Like, so being in front of people, talking to people, and especially for me doing things like filming content, like I need my energy for that. Like I have to have really high energy, or just like getting a lot of tedious work done that takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort to like concentrate and pay attention. I'll try to like do all those things in those first 2 weeks and prep myself for the 2 weeks that I'm like going to be going through this phase of like sadness and depression and whatever, and like just being slow overall.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I'd take it a little bit more easier those next two
Good for
weeks,
you.
just to give my body the time to relax, because otherwise I'll put this pressure on myself that I'm like, oh, I'm not doing enough. Like
Yeah.
I feel guilty that I didn't get this and this done, or blah, blah, blah. And that just makes everything even worse. Like I end up feeling more anxious, more depressed. Like I feel worse about myself, and I'm not really giving my body the time to heal the way it needs to. That's how I schedule. myself.
I think it's fantastic. So I'm starting to track my period too now, just so that I can get a better understanding of what I go through, because I definitely go through a similar emotional and kind of energy level change
Mhm.
throughout the month. Like it's very noticeable. So I'm gonna do it now too, because I
Did
feel
you
like,
sorry, did you find your period changed after your pregnancy or?
oh my God, can I tell you? So after you have a baby and if you're breastfeeding, you're supposed to not get your period for a number of months.
Mhm.
And I got mine 8 weeks after I had Sophia, and I was still breastfeeding. Like that's just one of the nice things of like, having a baby and breastfeeding, is that you don't get your period for, and I didn't even know that was a thing. And I'm like, awesome, like I'm not gonna get my period for like a year. I got it in 8 weeks. So
Oh
I found
man.
that for me, the only thing that changed, like emotionally, like the hormones were the same, but I find that my flow just changed. So
Oh,
my
okay.
flow decreased.
It's crazy. Like I feel like over the years my period has really changed the way it is, and like the
Yeah,
symptoms that I feel. Like when I was
yeah.
younger, I never used to get cramps. Like everyone's like cramps and back pains and blah blah blah. I'm like, oh, I don't get those. Like
Oh yeah,
like I used to get my period all the time, but they weren't
yeah,
painful. Now
yeah, yeah.
they're just like all the time and painful. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the worst. Like, why do I have to go through this? And like I get like back pains, neck, like this whole right side of me just
Oh,
like is like completely stiff. I feel like I can't like even move. It's all knotted and
oh
just like
my
the
God.
worst headaches. Like I don't sleep for like about like a week and a half, 2 weeks at minimum. Um
Wow.
and yeah, it's just
And you're still dealing with that.
yeah, I'm actually going through it right now. Today's the first day I started feeling like this. I'm supposed to get my
Good.
period next week.
Okay.
And literally I woke up this morning at 8 o'clock and I was like, okay, I'm gonna edit some YouTube videos or whatever. And by like 9:40, I was like out cold again. Like
I know.
I had to go back to bed. I slept for like 2 hours. So I'm like, cause I'm like, I know I need my energy because I'm going to talk to you right now.
Yeah,
And I was like, I need to sleep. Otherwise I'm going to like go into this half asset and, it's not going to turn out the way I wanted to.
for sure, for sure.
So I've really learned how to like navigate through it, but it took me, I would say like 4 years to figure it out. Like,
Yeah.
and that's such a long time. I wish someone had just kind of like told me this, like being like, okay, like, I mean, like, that you go through different phases, but I don't think we as women, because we don't talk about it, you don't fully take in how much that affects your day-to-day
Yes,
life.
for
You know
sure,
what I
for
mean? You
sure.
just,
Yeah.
I think, like you said, we're put in this society where you're just expected to perform, and so you just suck it up and you do it,
You
right?
push yourself and you push yourself. And then you're told like that you're like, women are stereotyped to be emotional. And it's like, well, because we have all these different hormones that are changing all the time.
That's actually the next question I want to ask you. Have you ever been made to feel like your emotions are invalid because of your period?
Yeah, I feel like society does that, right? As soon as you get oh, she must be on her period. Oh,
Or
she's
even
acting
if
crazy
you're
because she's on her
not on
period.
your period and you're just like saying something that's like, you know what I
Yes,
mean?
yeah, that's more opinionated or harsher or louder or whatever. People are just like, oh, she's acting crazy. Oh, are you on your period?
Are you
It's like,
PMSing?
yeah, and I'm like, what? And that makes me
Yeah.
even more angry. And then they'll be like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm like, no, I'm not on my period. This is me, and you are the problem. Like you are pissing me off. It's
I
not my period.
know.
Like
I
why can't you be
know.
the problem? Like why am I the problem? Like I
Oh,
don't
and it's always made
understand.
out to us being the problem. It's always made out to like us being like, oh, she's on her period. She's just like crazy. And I'm like, I'm
Yes,
not crazy. First of all, like, why don't you try
to go through what I'm
bleeding?
going through.
Yeah, like, why don't you like deal with these like hormonal fluctuations while also like bleeding out of your vagina for 7 days and having backaches and
Yep.
like everything's stiff and you have headaches and you can't sleep and you're cramping and it feels like someone's like punching the inside of your uterus,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and like, and then some
And
people,
then
like
tell me
some
not to
women
be
have
crazy.
different symptoms. Like I know women that throw up, like you said,
Yeah.
you knew a woman that was bleeding like profusely. Like there's so many different aspects that women go through when they go through their period, that it's like, well, can you just be a little bit more considerate and stop blaming everything on my period, when sometimes you are the problem. Like sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes I get it, sometimes we're irritated, but I don't think that really gives you the right to go around being like, are you on your period?
No,
Like,
because I feel like the period is just this term to people when women bleed, and it's a time that they're crazy. That's it, right? And then, but they really don't understand the hormonal cycle behind it that causes emotional changes, mental changes, and literally physical changes. And I feel like, again, I'm glad you're having this discussion, because I think, one, women need to realize they're going through it, because a lot of us don't. Like, when you're in sex ed, you're just told not to have sex. You're not told about all this other, you're told about your period and the cycles and how the egg develops or whatever, but you're not, I never learned about how it can impact you from a mental health and physical well-being, right? And no one's taught that. Guys and girls obviously aren't taught that. So I feel like there's such a lack of education, and I think it's an important conversation.
Yeah, 100%. I think the mental aspect of having your period is like, it's really daunting sometimes to have to go through that every single month. And for me, for example,
like
like
half your life, right?
Exactly. And for me, when I went through like going through this whole birth control situation and going through anxiety and all this stuff with it, all because of like how my period was acting. Like now when I do have my period, it's kind of like PTSD, where I feel traumatized because I feel like what I felt like when I was back on birth control, and birth control was what caused me to end up being like this. And it's just like a vicious cycle, right?
For
and
sure.
like people will just like push off your problems, like your period problems, like, oh, okay, well, here, take some birth control. Like it's a tic tac. And I'm
it's
like,
the worst ever.
no, I'm like, there has to be an underlying issue. There's like, my period should not be functioning like this. And that was like one thing, like when I went to the doctors, like I felt like they didn't really know what
There's
was
a lack of knowledge around women's health, right? All around in general. It's like it's a fact. Everyone knows that. And I think that's just an example that we don't know anything about the period. We don't know what, like, we know like some scientific basics, but for example, for people that don't have regular periods, we're just told to manage the symptoms through birth control, but we don't know what the underlying issue is. And the problems, I think, arise later on, like, well, not later on for you, they arise immediately because hormones impact us so much mentally. But then later on, if you decide that you want to have a child, I think those hormonal changes caused by birth control can also impact that, right? And for some reason, no one's looking at it from that future perspective. They're just looking at it as a short term, let's get like, this period under control. How can we stop this? Exactly. Not how can we make it better. It is a band-aid solution.
Exactly. And you know what I've never understood? I'm like, why is there not male birth control? You can make female birth control. Why can't you do male birth control? There has to be a way. Like, I don't understand.
I didn't even think
like,
about that.
I've heard, and I don't know how true this is because obviously I'm not in the medical community, but like that they have started testing for male birth control, or they've like been saying it for years and years and years now, but then they're like, oh, because there's so many side effects, they won't release it. And I was like, bro, what do you think we've been going through for like years and years and years now? I'm
That's
like,
kind of tragic, eh?
You know how many side effects like come with birth control when we're on it? Like the weight gain, the anxiety, the depression, the suicidal thoughts, like just going like the mood swings were, oh my God, they were mind boggling to me. Cause first of all, I had no idea that that's what was happening. No idea. It took me like 3-4 months to realize that it was my birth control that was causing these mood swings. And it wasn't just me being crazy. And like the only reason that I realized that was because like I had this like random epiphany one night after I had gotten into a fight with Vikra. I like hung up the phone and I had this like random like thought back to like, I think when I was like in first year university, one of my roommates was telling me how when she was on birth control, she went like crazy, and they realized it was the birth control like causing mood swings, and she just like didn't understand why she was always picking fights with her family and with her boyfriend and stuff like that. And then I was like, oh my God, is that what's happening? Because like Vikra started talking to me about like how I started acting out like a lot more than usual, just like getting angry about things more than usual. And I was like, oh, maybe it's that. And then when I switched up my birth control, I noticed a reduction in that. It didn't go away, but I did notice like it reduced a bit. And then when I got off of it, I was like completely, no, I wouldn't say completely fine mentally, but like I wasn't having like mood swings like I was before, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't so like drastic and like crazy and all over the place. And like, it was insane to me. And I was like, how did I not know this? Or like, how did no one, like, why have I never really heard anyone talk about this before?
Yeah. Or why didn't your doctor talk to you about the possible side effects?
Yeah.
Right.
And I think it's because like I was on birth control before, I don't know, but like even when I did go to, because I was going in and out of doctors all the time, and I was like, and even when I did talk to her about like me feeling this way on birth control, her first thing was like, okay, well, you're already on the lowest dosage that you can possibly find. If we put you on a higher dosage, this might increase, like these symptoms might increase because it's obviously a higher dosage. But the next thing she said to me was, she's just like, here's some antidepressants. Like, do you want antidepressants? I was like, no, bitch, I don't want antidepressants.
No, you're giving me a pill for the problem and then a pill for the solution.
Yeah.
Why don't we just find out the actual problem? Why don't we find the root cause of this?
Exactly.
That is terrible.
Exactly. And it wasn't like I had to do so much like trial and error to figure out how to stop my problems, and like it was of no help from like a medical professional. And like I had to just like ask around, like I had to ask random people, and that's such a like odd thing to do sometimes because like I got to a point where I was fine with it because I'm more of an outspoken person. But you know, some people don't have that luxury. Some people don't feel comfortable talking about these things. So like for me, it was like, okay, I had to ask around, and people were like, okay, you need to figure out how to reduce your stress. And like, and then I started realizing sugar is like also the devil, and that causes a lot of mood swings. So reduce your like refined sugar intake, you know, the white sugars, like the bad sugars.
Yeah.
Like reduce those, and like, and then start doing things to help release your stress. So like exercise, like, you know, meditating, whatever helps you personally release your stress. So once I started doing that, I started becoming more regular, but that took me like 4 years to figure out. And just imagine having to go through that like stage for like 4 years of your life of just not knowing what the hell is going on, just constantly bleeding. And then on top of that, like, people don't know that you're going through this phase in your life or that these things are happening, because it's not just something that you openly want to talk about all the time, or not something that you feel happy about with yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then you have like the regular pressures of just like being a woman, you know? And
it's true.
And it's like, how do you handle it all? How do you manage it? Like, I don't know.
But you know, it's amazing though that like you were able to figure this out in your 20s, and now you have the rest of your life to look kind of, you know, forward to with more perspective on what works for you, and you're like designing your life for what works for you. And I think as women, that's what we have to do. We have to design our lives not based on society's expectations or other people's expectations, but for what works for us, right? And not trying to like tell ourselves that we can be like someone else, you know, because that's just not, we can't compare ourselves to each other. It's not realistic anymore. But I think it's great that, I know it took 4 years, but there's people that like live a lifetime and they think that those mood swings and what they're going through is who they are as people. So you know,
that's what I ended up thinking.
Yeah, exactly. And now that you're able to kind of figure it out, now you can share that information, and now hopefully you're like more of a not a calmer place, but more of a smoother place, right?
Yeah. Like I kind of understand what's going on. Like I have a little bit more information, because that's totally what I was thinking. I was like, okay, well, I guess this is my life now.
This is who I am. Like I feel crazy. People think I'm crazy. Maybe I'm crazy.
Yeah. Right? And it actually got to that point, and it really, really, like when I was going through like the thick of it, like when I was going through the worst part of it, that was my biggest battle. It wasn't at this point even the period anymore. Like it was exhausting to constantly have your period, but like the mental aspect of it was way more exhausting. Like I felt like I had no idea who I was anymore. I like completely lost myself in that process. Like I feel like I had no idea who I was anymore. I didn't understand. I remember telling Vicar this. I was like, I didn't understand when I had the right to certain emotions. And it's so weird that I say it like that, because like I shouldn't be calling it my right to have this emotion. Like if I feel something, I feel something. I can't like what makes you happy doesn't make me happy, and or doesn't always make me happy, or vice versa, right? Like you can't tell me that this thing shouldn't make you angry. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And
And
I feel like we ourselves though believe that like if something is that makes someone else angry, I feel like I take away my right to emotion all the time because
mhm,
I'm like, why do I feel like that if it's not the same for someone else?
exactly. And I'm like, but you don't get what I'm going through. So I do have a right to feel that way. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, I shouldn't be yelling or having these mood swings, but I'm like, I also can't help myself, right? And especially when you're going through these hormonal changes, I think that's what men especially don't realize, where they're just like,
They
we'll
can
just
never
get it
understand it.
together. Like use logic. And I was like, bruh, logic is out the window. Okay. Like the logic
This
doesn't
is
sit
not
here
a
anymore.
logic game. This
Yeah.
is a physical manifestation of something that's going on in our bodies right now.
Exactly. I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't like use logic in this situation. I was like, why don't you try using logic while your hormones are fluctuating, and then give me a call and let me know how it goes. You know what I mean? Like it's
Absolutely. Because
impossible.
our hormones are the ones that cause us to react certain ways. They're the ones that produce certain reactions. Like there's physical manifestations, right? So you mentally, like when I'm like getting angry, to say, you know, it's a certain time, like it's that time that I'm having my periods a week before, I'm definitely going to be more irritable, a little bit more angry. And yeah, in my mind, I can think, this is my period, but in like I know it is, but I'm like, I don't care. This is how I feel right now.
Yeah,
So this
yeah,
is me right now, Mike.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you get Shobana, you know, that's not irritable and normal for 2 weeks, and then the other 2 weeks you get this girl.
yeah.
And so this is real. I'm like, this is not just like something that's manageable. So you need to figure out how to deal with it because this is me.
Exactly. Okay, so that's like,
Poor Mike, but it's the truth.
because they're like, you need to like they put the managing aspect on us. Like I think
Yeah.
society in general, just not just
For
like
sure.
our fiance or husband or whatever.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I think society, they put it on us to be able to manage it. And I'm like, but you haven't given us any of the tools to be able to manage it.
Necessitated.
And how do you manage something that is so unmanaged, like that you can't, that you physically cannot manage? Like you
Yeah.
can't control that.
Yeah.
So like, how do you expect me to be like on my A game and be logical all the time and like, you know, have it all together when there's so much going on? And I think one thing that they like, especially men, think is that like, oh, you're bleeding. Like, how bad could it be? I'm like, no, it's not just bleeding. Like the fact that you're bleeding and you have cramps and back pains and, you know, your head hurts and you're not sleeping and all these things, I'm like, they all happen at the same time. So like, how do you, like, if it was one symptom at a time, yeah, okay, maybe like a little bit more manageable, but like the fact that it's all happening at once, I was like, how would you feel if you were in that situation?
Yeah, like you're unwell for 2 weeks every month, right? That's what it
Yeah,
comes down to. And I think it's one of those things that how do you possibly understand it if you're not going through it? You know, what is the comparison here? There is just like labor, like carrying a baby. Like I just think there's some things that you they'll never be able to necessarily maybe empathize with because they literally can't, you
don't go through
know?
it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And
it's so
it's so like it's
frustrating.
so much that I don't think, no, it is, it can be frustrating, but I feel like I don't think they can comprehend the magnitude of what we go through because it's so uncomprehendable if you don't go through it. Like, you don't even realize how crazy it is that we go through all this stuff, you know?
So true.
And
It's
then no one
so
talks about it on top of that. So that it's just like, yeah, I feel
it's
like it
so true.
sometimes it just feels like made up. I think the only thing we can do is talk about
Talk
it.
about it. Yeah,
And
I think out of this conversation, I feel like I wish people were just a little bit more sensitive
I
towards
agree.
it, because it is a big problem that half our population like suffers from. And our society is built to work around a man's schedule, when women
And
make,
health, and a man's
and
health.
health, yes, and but women make up such a big portion of the way our society functions, especially now, because we're not just like caretakers anymore. We don't just like look after the house anymore. Like we play a very vital role in our society these days. And so like, if you're not taking care of us the way you take care of men, then like, you're not going to get the most out of us. And women also will feel this, like, I guess, resentment towards, like, I know I sometimes feel it, where I'm just like, well, fuck you, you're not going through this. So like, how can you tell me how to feel right now? And how can you tell me how to like work right now? And how can you tell me to do this, this, and that? Like, of course I'm going to be a bitch to you, especially when I'm going through this, because like, it's hard, it's rough. And if you're not going to be sensitive towards it, then this is what you're going to deal with, you know? And then they don't like that either. So it's like,
it's a cycle. It's a cycle.
yeah.
And I feel like I think society is very, very, very slow to change. But the more we're aware of it, at least I feel like we can start having a conversation with each other and making it normal and okay for each other and teaching each other coping mechanisms. Like in the simple conversation I had with you, like a light bulb went off and I'm like, I need to track my period to see how it impacts my life. So now I'm doing more research on that and educating each other on how to, pardon me? It's a game changer. Yeah, for sure. And educating each other on how to manage this, I think will be a starting point of like, and now there's a lot of period movements and stuff too, which is fantastic. And then eventually, hopefully we'll see a redesign in society to help accommodate that. And also like a different option to birth control, which I agree is the devil. I feel even like antidepressants and anxiety like pills, I feel like, you know, because they're so freely and loosely given out sometimes just to treat symptoms, I feel like they're all very devil-like. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
it's these pharma companies, man. They're like money hungry, so they'll just pump all that shit in, and these doctors will give it out, and they make lots of money off of it. Like, I'm sure the birth control industry makes bank. Like,
it's really sad.
There's so many women that are on it and they don't realize how detrimental it can be to their health, or that it's even affecting their health in some ways. Because like, I didn't realize it was giving me mood swings. I was just like, okay.
Well, you would suspect that my doctor gave it to me. It's medicine. It should be fine.
Exactly.
Right? Because I think there's a huge reliance in our society on the medical system. And I think that as women, I learned through my friend that's gone through a lot of health issues when it's come to her period and pregnancy, that you have to take your health into your own hands. That's what it comes down to. And I know it sucks because it's like how and where and who, but you have
where do you get this information from? Where do you start? And like, you don't have a background in that. So like, how do you
I think being aware. Yeah, I think like what you do, like you're more aware of what you're going through and then trying to find, just Googling different, you know, symptoms and options. I think you can also see naturopaths, you can see acupuncturists, you can see Chinese medical doctors, you can see osteopaths. There's tons of other alternative medicines out there that I find sometimes can provide a lot of insight in terms of what's happening in your life too.
100%. But what bothers me about that is like, yes, those are the options, but like sometimes not all of them work for
sure,
like someone's particular case. So like for me, like I did go to a naturopath, I did do acupuncture, things like that, and they didn't, like, they maybe helped a little bit, but they didn't help to the full extent. But what bothers me the most about that is like, you sometimes don't really have time or the money to go through this trial and error process. Like I was lucky in the sense that I could, but a lot of women can't, right? So it's like, why is this not something that is just given and educated to us about for free, or like, you know, properly, like upfront? Like even things like pads, like why is that not free? Like why are they so expensive? I don't understand. Like each like little pack of like 20 or like 22 or whatever the hell they come in is like $5 to $6. And it's like you said, some women go through a lot of pads. Like there's some women that can go through like 3-4 pads in a day. You know, one pack almost in like a full like
cycle.
Right? Exactly. So it's like, well, how do you afford that sometimes when it's like not even your fault? Like that's just a natural body fluid that you had to like go through. That'd be like, I don't know if this is like equivalent, but like if you were to go into like a public washroom and you were not like, and they didn't give you, like you had to buy toilet paper, like, well, everyone shits. So like you kind of need it, right? So why are you just giving it for free? Same thing with periods. Like everyone goes, like all the women go through it. So why aren't they just available for us to have? Like why am I spending an arm and a leg to buy pads when it's like a natural part of, you know, who I am? But yeah, no, it was honestly such a great conversation. I really appreciate you talking about this with me and opening up about it.
Of course.
this is definitely something that was like close to my heart and something that always like irritated me. And I needed someone that was just as open about it to talk about it with. So
well, thank you for sharing your experiences, because I think, like I've said before, they're going to make changes. Like anyone that is going through it and that goes or listens to this, video, for example, or watches that video, I think any person it touches that's going through it, it will change them, right? Because they'll realize they're not alone. And now they have solutions.
Yeah.
So it's fantastic.
All right. Thank you so much. I love you.
Love you. Thank you for having me. Bye.